request according to the clerk. The correct time is
8:30 a.m.
8:30 a.m. Call to order is done. Item 2, disclosure of pecuniary interests. You all know what that is, and should you have some, you name it now, and if you come across something during the meetings, sound it off and we'll take it. Item 3 is the community service section. 3.1, deputations, petitions, presentations, and public meetings, none. Item 3.2, unfinished business. Signed bylaw review, December 2017 update with draft bylaw in March 2018. Item number 3.3, other agency reports, none. Item number 3.4, consent agenda. All items listed below will be approved by one resolution. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests it, in which case the item will be removed from the consent resolution and considered immediately following adoption of the remaining consent agenda items. And I believe we have 3 that have been held, correct? So I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Fulci, seconded by Councillor Belanger. Resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinated Committee does hereby receive the January 18th, 2018 consent agenda items 3.4 through to 3.4.3, and that the recommendation contained therein be adopted and amended.
Before you call vote, I'm just curious which ones were pulled before we vote on that, just so we're aware.
The ones that I have pulled is item C3, SK8 Georgian Bay contract. Mayor's pulled that one. Item IV, Sports and Recreation Council, terms of reference. I had 3 on that, Councillor Bray, Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Smith. And item 5, which is B, Community Hub Steering Committee terms of reference, held by Councillor Bray and Deputy Mayor and Councillor Smith. So just 3. All right, move on. We have that then. Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Belanger. Resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinating Committee does hereby receive the January 18th, 2018 consent agenda, item 3.4 through to 3.4.3, and that the recommendation contained therein be adopted as amended.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Fulci.
In favor?
Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
In favor.
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Stockwell.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of in favor, 0 votes.
Of course, so we'll deal with the items that have been pulled. The first one was item C3, SK8 Georgian Bay contract. Mr. Mayor, you pulled that one, sir.
I did. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to, I was going to say to Chris, but he isn't here. I guess my question is, with us looking to rebuild the arena and getting into a 3-year contract here, is that going to be problematic down the road, or is there something within that contract that allows us to get out early, or whatever may need to happen if it needs to happen? So we're not tied to this in such cases of a new arena being built.
Mr. CAO, could you help on that one?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the timing in terms of the new facility will be such that it'll be probably beyond 2020. So I think from that standpoint, I think the 3-year contract, I think municipality will be safe. And typically in our contracts, and I haven't had a chance to look through this one in detail, I can do that in a few minutes, but typically our contracts do have an escape clause in there. It may be 6 months, it may be 90 days, but I can confirm that for committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments? If not, that resolution, can we get a motion? Moved by Deputy Mayor by Fulci, seconded by Councillor Belanger. Resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinating Committee does recommend the Council authorize the Mayor and Clerk to enter in an agreement with SK8 Georgian Bay to operate the spring, summer, and fall skating schools at the Wasaga Stars Arena for 3-year period spanning the 2018 to 2020 calendar years. Any other comments on that? Any questions? If not, permit the vote to be called.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
In favor?
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Chair Stockwell.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, the next item is item C4, Sports and Recreation Council Terms of Reference. We have 3 members pull that in the top of the list of Councillor Bray. So the floor is yours, ma'am.
Sorry, I was listening to the page. I've never heard that before.
You're calling Chris to the classroom.
Do you want me to wait? Actually, it's more of a statement about governance. So we are setting up a sports council, but there's no reference in the terms of reference about procedural bylaw, town policies, code of conduct, etc. So I just wasn't sure why these terms of reference would be different than any other committee or council that we have as an advisory committee to council.
That's a question?
Yeah. Well, it's a comment. I can't support it without that because it
Can
doesn't
you
make
help
sense
us on
to
that,
me.
Mr. CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly that's something that the Code of Conduct does state that it does cover all council advisory committees and whatnot. If council is interested in seeing, certainly we can put certain language into this terms of reference to tie it back to the Code of Conduct, but the Code of Conduct does make reference to the committee.
So whether it's in the clause or not, it's there.
It's there, Mr. Chair, but I think from a standpoint in terms of clarity, I think that there may be some advantage of putting some language in there just to tie it back. So certainly we have language from other advisory committees that we could borrow and put into this term.
So what do you recommend we do with the clause? Do we hold it down, or do we simply get that done between now and the time it reaches council?
That would be my recommendation, Mr. Chair, is that that there'd be a motion to amend to insert a clause with respect to the reference back to the Code of Conduct, and that be submitted for the council meeting.
Yeah, so that it doesn't hold up the clause. So Councillor Bray, you could work on that type of a motion?
I could. At this point, we're only receiving it for information. So are we receiving it for information and to move it forward?
If it's just, Mr. Chair, if it's just receiving for information, that's fine, but I think that if it goes forward, then it should have those terms in there, and
Well, the point's been raised, and I think it's before the chair, and then it's before the committee. And we should be, once it's raised, it doesn't go away. We should deal with it. Councillor or Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I had similar concerns. I think mention of the Code of Conduct needs to be right in the terms of reference so that the members on that committee are well aware that they have to abide by that. And again, it was for information, so my question to Chris was, when do you see a final draft coming forward?
I apologize. I obviously missed the first step of this discussion, but in my mind, this was not to be an advisory committee to council, and I guess if we are to make that official, I'd look to the CAO on the exact protocol with this, but if we are, in that sense, I can prepare it for the next month. Mr. CAO, could I, with the chair?
thank you, Mr. Chair. So notwithstanding whether it's an advisory committee to staff or advisory committee to council, I think that if it involves members of the public, then I think that they're bound by the same requirements with respect to the code.
Okay, I understand the question now. It can be amended.
Councillor Smith, you held this as well.
Yes, I just want to note that the next terms of reference for the other committee that Chris has done a report for that terms of reference has meant the paragraph in there about code of conduct and everything, so maybe just taking it from one report and copying it into the other one, because it's in the second, committee report.
So, Mr. CAO, can you wrap up a motion that would take care of this concern before it reaches council, or do we refer the matter back?
Mr. Chair, certainly I'd be prepared to draft something. I think that I mentioned earlier in terms of what the content of that would be, and I'd be happy to do that.
Would that be agreeable to the members of the committee? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Chris. Chris, how quickly or soon do you wish to have this Sports and Recreation Council set up and ready to go? I'm asking the question because if this is something he wants to do fairly quickly, then we should probably pass a motion today to keep it moving along. If not, it could be referred back, in my opinion.
Definitely 1 month. We are communicating with this group, with these groups regularly, and it wouldn't be much of a delay to put it back to February. So in that sense, it would be reasonable. This is an engagement tool for us to officially engage those groups.
So if that's agreed to by the committee, I would take a referral motion.
I would make
Councillor
that
Brady
motion.
move a referral back, and if need a seconder. Deputy Mayor? Get that, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
So it's a referral motion, then we can vote on the referral motion? Yes, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Just because Chris said you're not seeing this as a advisory committee to council, so you see this just as a group who will sit with you and then you will bring forward a report to council. Is that? I'm just want to make sure that we understand what exactly this group is going to be doing.
Yes, certainly there may at times be ideas that come forward from this committee that would require council approvals if we launch some type of an initiative that the group would consider important. But for the most part, the idea is to collaborate amongst our different groups and come up with shared, for example, communication tools or training opportunities that officials in a soccer group, just like officials in a hockey group, could take advantage of, for example.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a motion, then a referral motion moved by Councillor Bray, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Be it resolved that the Coordinating Committee refer item 3.4.1 to staff to insert reference regarding the code of conduct. CAO, you call the vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Lightfoot.
In favor?
Councillor Brady.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
In favor.
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor.
Chair Stockwell.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, item 5, Community Hub Steering Committee terms of reference. Councillor Bray.
Thank you. I had pulled this one because it does, as Councillor Smith pointed out, have the roles and responsibilities, including that members adhere to the terms of reference, the code of conduct, bylaws, policies, and procedures that apply to council members. However, I'm not sure how we can enforce that. Later on in the agenda, we're going into a closed session to talk about concerns regarding a member. And I know the clerk has mentioned, we could use the integrity commissioner. But I think adding the integrity commissioner to the governance level for advisory committees is an unnecessary expense for the taxpayers. I think we need to have some greater control at this table than at the integrity commissioner. We know that it's a very expensive service, and I think wherever possible we shouldn't set ourselves up to use it. So I would just like to see how we enforce the roles and responsibilities of members when we set up a new committee.
But this is following what we just did on the previous motion. We referred it back. We weren't concerned about that
It's
one.
just
Which I would be willing to do for this one, because later in our agenda, we're actually talking about what happens when members of a committee don't do what we're asking them to do. Right now, that we have been advised that, involve the integrity commissioner. I don't think that's appropriate.
Fine, then.
So I would, yes, I would
The
support a
chair is quite prepared to deal with whatever motion's put forward, and if you're putting a motion to refer it back, Is that the idea?
At this point, I wanted to make my comments to see if anyone else had the same concern before I make that.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So I think with respect to the community hub, through you, sorry, to Chris, I think this is one that staff are wanting to get formed and get rolling on as soon as possible. And so I think the proper wording is here in the terms of reference with respect to members of committees being bound by the code of conduct. And so I think that's there. How we decide as committee or as council to deal with those breaches or whatever you may wish to call them, I think we can decide at a later date because the code of conduct is clear. So I wouldn't want to hold staff up on this for another month moving forward because council needs to decide how they want to deal with the code of conduct. We can decide that hopefully today and move forward. And if there's an issue as this committee is formed, because I'm assuming it's going to take, after this is approved, it's probably going to take another month to 2 months to form the committee and get them in place and get them brought up to speed, so on and so forth. So I think delaying that would be a mistake on our part. I think it gives us time in moving this forward today to decide as a committee how we wish to deal with issues with the code of conduct, Mr. Chair.
Mr. CAO, I got you. Unless, Mr. CAO, can you help us on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to piggyback on what the mayor said, I view this as being an issue with respect to the code of conduct because the code of conduct outlines the mechanics of enforcement. So if there's interest in introducing a change to the code of conduct with respect to how complaints are investigated, that's what the code of conduct, and that would require amendment to the code of conduct. So it really doesn't impact here because this just makes reference to the code of conduct. So my suggestion would be that if there was a will of the body, then it would be a motion to request staff to review the code of conduct with respect to how complaints are dealt with in that fashion. It's not per se dealing with the terms of reference in front of committee.
Deputy Mayor, you had a question?
A comment, basically, I would agree with what Councillor Bray is saying. I think this council appoints people to these committees. If they don't follow the code of conduct, we have the authority to remove them. I don't think that we need to cost the taxpayers more money with the integrity commissioner, so I would like to see that code of conduct updated. I won't be supporting this recommendation. I think that any more committees that are formed, I know the intent is to only have a few council members on it, but these are big important issues in our town, and if all members of council can't be part of it, I can't support it. One question I do have for Chris is the members that will be put on this committee, will they be screened properly? We're dealing with issues now where members put on these committees are not following the code of conduct. These are things that could have been dealt with before people were appointed by doing a proper search, be it on social media and things like that. Will these people be searched out first?
Well, there will be an application process, and I believe the final selection will come from the mayor. But absolutely, we will set parameters, and as you can see from the terms of reference document, there will be 3 public members, and it will be based on past experience that will try and bring additional skills into our group.
Okay, thank you.
So where are we?
Mr. Chair, I think the comments were with respect to the code of conduct as opposed to the terms of reference, other than what the deputy mayor commented. So from the standpoint, if there's no further questions, then the matter may be before the assembly.
Councillor Smith?
Just a quick comment about this conversation. I think that's something for an in-camera meeting today, and it shouldn't be part of this community hub discussion. And just a note to Chris, because I was project manager for the Y, you know that, and we had a fundraising member on that committee. So I just wanted to recommend that you include somebody who has experience in fundraising, because that's going to be an important part of this committee. You're going to come up with a price, but you still need to start thinking about fundraising.
Thank you, definitely. It will be a part of this final process. Yeah, good.
Okay, so I'm going to read the original motion. Moved by Councillor Belanger and seconded by Councillor Smith. Resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinating Committee recommend to Council that it receive the draft terms of reference for the Town of Wasaga Beach Community Hub Steering Committee as information. And further, the Council directs staff to advertise for interested applicants and work to establish the Community Hub Steering Committee as an advisory committee of Council. And further, the Council appoint 3 members of Council to the steering committee. Any further comments? If not, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the CEO to call the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bypolchi.
Opposed?
Councillor Bray.
Opposed?
Councillor Ego.
In favor.
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Chair Stockwell.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 5 in favor and 2 opposed.
Okay. So that is the agenda. So that's the end of the agenda, and we're gonna call a short recess, 10 minutes? Yeah, okay, we'll go till 9 o'clock on our break.
Of coordinated committee to order. This is the public works section. We have no deputations, petitions, or presentations. Nothing under unfinished business or other agency reports. We have a consent agenda. It's moved by Councillor Ego, seconded by Councillor Belanger. Be it resolved that the public works section of coordinated committee hereby receives the January 18th, 2018 consent agenda items 4.4.1 through to 4.4.3. and that all the recommendations contained therein be adopted as amended. We've had one pulled, that was the Community Transportation Grant Program, Municipal Stream. Is there anything else to be pulled? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor.
Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
In favor.
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell.
In favor.
Chair by Fulci.
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you. And this item was pulled by Councillor Bray, myself, and Mr. Mayor. However, I know staff wanted to speak to it as well. So if you want to go first, and then hopefully some questions will be answered.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. As you know, the province recently announced the Community Transportation Grant Program, which will offer up to $500,000 over the course of 5 years for local transportation initiatives to help build or enhance the existing systems, which is fantastic. There's a number of conditions tied to the funding program, including a partnership with the community organization to help support the application. And I know at staff level, our key priority is specialized transit and providing transit services to those beyond the fixed conventional route and provide service to those that are challenged mobility-wise and can't walk to the bus stops or are beyond the capacity to get onto the current system. There is currently that service is I guess informally provided through the Red Cross, and there's an opportunity to enhance that to increase trip capacity for not just medical but personal trips, school trips for those that are attending college or school, as well as certainly still medical appointments, but even employment. So we're looking at, that's the focus at a staff level in terms of advancing the application through specialized transit to reach those individuals and seniors that including seniors, beyond the current fixed route to get them to their destination and accommodate those challenges. So the application is due the end of February. We have yet to advance discussions with an organization such as the Red Cross. We are familiar with the Red Cross because they provide the enhanced specialized transit service for the town of Collingwood, and they have an agreement with them, and so that's kind of our first step is to look to them. You need to partner with, as I mentioned, a community organization that also has experience in the transportation service sector and or has resources and assets to support that. So that is the obvious for us, and I know even fortunately for the funding, but unfortunately our master transit study is still, it's nearing completion. We're just going through the first draft, and we hope to have that study presented to committee in February. But I wanted to get this in front of committee in advance of that, because there is a lot of background information that we need to put together in business plans and certain planning that we need to do to support the application. But it would be a great opportunity for us if we can take advantage of this and get $500,000 certainly over the next 5 years to help advance the service that we need now. So
Absolutely. So today you just wanted to bring it for information, update everybody, but is your intent then to have something brought forward next month after speaking with Red Cross? And
yeah, fortunately we have a committee meeting before the end of February, so there's some and Red Cross is one organization. Certainly we can explore others, and you can also go to another municipality or different organizations, but the experience and the qualifications that they have certainly complement this process. But yeah, a report will follow in terms of where we are, but I just wanted to table that at least with committee to let them know the direction we're going and what we see as the priority for this one.
okay, great, thank you. First on the list is Councillor Bray.
Thank you. You answered my questions. It was more about next steps and, yeah, thank you.
Mayor Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the director. So Kevin, it'll come back to us next committee, and that's still going to allow you enough time to have it submitted by the end of February? Comfortable there? Okay. Other than that, my question's been answered. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Smith?
Thank you through you, Madam Chair, to Kevin. Kevin kindly, I believe, was at the last age-friendly meeting, and a lot of transportation questions were asked and answered. And I know Kevin knows it's one of the priorities of the committee is to the transportation aspect of it. So I think the committee is very supportive of what's going to happen. And I'm just wondering if you said you needed support. Could the committee be one of the ones, or you need an outside agency that would support that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Certainly as we go through the application conditions, we'll look to those types of committees to support. Maybe it's a letter of support and
Okay,
recommendation.
yeah.
That's something that, if necessary, we will certainly engage age-friendly. Obviously, the Accessibility Advisory Committee is a key element to the success of this as well. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Thanks, Kevin. Moved by Councillor Belanger, seconded by Councillor Ego. Be it resolved that the Public Works section of Coordinated Committee does hereby receive the Community Transportation Grant Program correspondence dated January 8, 2018 for information.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
In favor?
Councillor Smith.
In favor?
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell.
In favor.
Chair by Fulci.
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay. And we will take a 5-minute recess to exchange our recording secretaries and start again. Thanks for rushing over, Cheryl. Yes, you too.
I know. I didn't, just don't.
Excuse me, that's calling the meeting back to order, that's okay. This is the Development Services section of the coordinated committee meeting. Deputation, petitions, presentations, and public meetings. I'll ask Keith Spence from Bronte Engineering to come forward.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee, staff, and Keith Spence with Bronte Engineering. I'm representing Green Hill Homes. Vince Colucci, representing Green Hill Homes, here is also at the meeting today. We're here to make a short presentation just for the request and support for the exemption for the park lot control. The Green Hill Homes have been constructing Shady Hill townhouses now for several years, of course, right on the north side of Mosley Street between 15th and 16th Avenue under site plan control. Right. Bronte Engineering has been involved with Mr. Casito and Green Hill Homes now since 2016 when we looked after the installation of service connections and now and the associated works. Since then, Mr. Green Hill Homes has been constructing phase 2 of the works, which are the central 6 townhouse developments. They've been under construction since 2016 and have hoped to be completed earlier this year, of course, right? So, unfortunately, with construction schedules and they often do not meet the time frame that's desired, of course, right? And it's come to a situation of the fact is now that the homes have been completed now. 2 of the units actually have been occupied with occupancy permits issued, of course, right? And the intention now is wanting to go ahead and close the units themselves, of course, with the prospective home buyers, of course, right? So the units as part of the site plan control, it's a standard practice to undertake topsoil sodding and construction of driveways and associated works, of course, right, prior to sales of the property, of course, right. Owing to the weather conditions, unfortunately, we do live in Canada here, and unfortunately, we don't have a full 12 months construction season, so that it's been unable to complete the required works to meet the requirements, of course, right. The Mr. Colucci has prepared an undertaking is submitted to staff, which supports the fact is that the associated works would be completed by June 30th of 2018 this year. We've also contacted all the prospective home buyers, of course, right? 5 of the units have now are ready to be are sold and ready to be closed, with the 6th one hopefully in the near future, of course, right? And we do have acknowledgements from the various, the 5 homeowners who have been sold to date right now, that they acknowledge the fact is that their driveways have not been paved and the sites have been topsoil sodding, but they do wish to proceed with the closing, of course, right, with the expectation that all works will be completed by June 30th this year. Just to highlight a couple things, the fact is that the site plan control, site plan shows the fact is that Shady Lane, which is parallel to Mosley Street, is can be used as an access road for, let's say, 100 years. I don't know. It's I haven't been around quite that long. I've been here a long time, of course, right? But anyways, it is partially paved now. The works were done, the portion adjacent to phase 1 development, but the rest of it's not been completed as yet. The roadway itself is not a fire route. It's not being used for emergency. Mosley Street is the designated fire route with hydrant and else available on that. So it's deemed to be a private driveway itself, of course, right? And so the roadway itself is plowed, thank you very much, by the town, I understand, on an infrequent basis or as necessary, but Mr. Colucci and Green Hill Homes are also committed to ensuring the fact that the road and driveways are cleared of snow during the winter months, of course, right? So with respect to, I think that's pretty much the summary of what's happening now. The fact is that I'd like to proceed ahead with the closing, of course, like that. He said the residents themselves have been, 5 home buyers are very much interested, of course, right? Green Hill Homes themselves delaying occupancy or the closing of the units until June. it creates a financial situation, of course, right, which is not ideal, and certainly not wanted, so. Thanks to the members of the committee for the presentation. I hope, we're very pleased to see the fact is that staff, we've been in discussions with them, of course, right, and the staff are supporting this, understand too, so.
Thank you.
Certainly any questions? Any
Any questions from council around the table?
Through you, with the plowing of Shady Lane.
Shady Lane, yes.
I had to look that one up. It's the only comment I've ever heard from any resident about the development of those townhouses. Everybody else has said nothing but good things, but I know that residents with access, can they also access their property from Shore Lane, or is Shady Lane the only way to get into some of those properties?
No, I believe
Because they're-
the primary emphasis, I believe, are on Shore Lane.
Okay.
Okay, right, but the thing is that, I believe that's correct, Vince, right? That for the residents to the north of your development, they have primary emphasis off Shore Lane. Just that, they certainly use Shade.
So this is just their back door.
Use their back door, that's right, so, and for parking on those two pieces.
Thank you.
Mayor Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have also had the same question by a couple of residents on Shady Lane with respect to their access to and from. I understand that their proper street address is probably, and I'll look to staff on this, the proper street address for those folks is probably Shore Lane. However, many of them for many, many years, it may be 100 years or whatever it may be, have always accessed their property to their garages or so on and so forth off of Shady Lane, and there's a concern that they will lose that ability to do so. So maybe if staff or the developer can speak to that, that would be helpful.
Doug?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to respond to that question. In fact, the properties to the north of Shady Lane, they are municipally addressed off of Shore Lane. That is their principal access. However, there has been historical use of Shady Lane by those property owners, by many of those property owners. Through Green Hill Homes, who I understand have done title search over Shady Lane, the town has advised that 3, possibly 4 of those Shore Lane properties have legal access easement over Shady Lane. The others do not have that legal access registered on title. So the question would be whether they have a legal access that could be argued in the courts, and it's a matter for the courts. We staff have also taken a number of calls from residents who have been longtime users of Shady Lane and trying to adjust with the development, the Green Hill Homes development. So we do take a lot of questions on it, but the quick summary is we simply don't know whether some of those residents have legal access to Shady Lane, albeit they have been using it for so many years.
Supplementary, if I may. So then there's no chance, as I understand, Doug, if they have legal access through right-of-way on title, I'm assuming, over this, there's no chance that we're going to shut Shady Lane down.
No, Shady Lane is required. It is the primary access for these new Green Hill Homes units, which is really the substance of why we're all here today to discuss this, because the town's requirements, and we're always looking out for the rights of the owners when we're creating lots. We want to make sure that the new buyers, the lots are at meet a basic minimum standard before they move in. And one of those basic standards is that the roadway access to the unit be paved. In this instance, that's not the case. The Shady Lane in front of the 6 new units to be built is not yet paved. The staff are fairly comfortable in our agreement with Bronte Engineering in the situation in that, for emergency services, which is one of the main reasons for paving, that can be achieved through the Mosley Street frontage.
Okay.
Even though that's not the main access for the users, their garages are off in Shady Lane. And the county has been servicing Shady Lane, the first 4 units, with waste removal for 2 years now, and without any difficulty going over the asphalted part in front of the 4 units and the sanded part in the remainder of the lane. So staff are fairly comfortable that the function of the site the new landowners will be able to access the garages, and we're satisfied that they've all provided undertakings. We're still working on the wording and awaiting the decision of committee and council, but in part and in whole.
Thank you, Dr. Tangman. Councillor Belanger.
Thank you, Chair. Doug, further to that question, if I'm hearing this correctly, the new homes will have title to Shady Lane as it's their primary access. If they were to have a neighbor adjacent to them that did not have legal access and they had some kind of exception, they could take legal action to cause some issue for that neighbor, I'm assuming. So all I'm not related to today's decision, but I would think that's something that we would want clarified prior to all of the homes being completed. And
thank you, and through you to Madam Chair. Much of this discussion was argued in front of the OMB back in 1999 through 2002 when the OMB first considered this application. And legal right to Shady Lane was a large part of that OMB decision, and the OMB actually put a stop to the hearing and asked legal counsel for both sides to go research it and come back and report. And what they reported was that the block, Park Block D, the Green Hill Homes lands did have legal access easement over Shady Lane. And the question at that time was, could you create additional lots over the Green Hill Home lands, and would that in turn allow them to have that same legal access? And the answer was yes. The question about legal access then translates to the properties to the north, who've always been using Shady Lane. And do they have legal access? Green Hill Homes tells us that only three properties have legal access over Shady Lane?
Yes.
3 properties. So of the remainder of those properties that front onto Shore Lane, it's really a matter for the courts to decide whether they have legal access through squatters' rights, if you will. I'm not even sure that's the right term, but because of long-term use. But that's something for the courts to decide. And really, it doesn't impact the decision to create lots on Shady Lane, because that's already been reviewed and assessed through the OMB hearing way back when, before the Green Hill Homes site plan was ever approved by the OMB. It's I don't know if I'm being ultimately clear on it.
Councillor Belanger.
I guess my question is, thank you, Chair, could the landowner not grant legal access prior to the remaining homes being sold, so that it could be added to their title, and then it would be a non-issue in the courts, or at least for the vast majority?
Through you, Madam Chair, my understanding with my discussions with Mr. Cosito is that he has in fact advised some of those landowners that if you wish to secure legal access over Shady Lane, Green Hill Homes is the legal owner of Shady Lane, and they would have to come to an agreement to secure that legal access, which is the normal standard for interaction between landowners.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any more questions for Mr. Spence? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation today. Next, we have unfinished business. Other agency reports, we have none. Consent agenda, recommendation that the Development Services Section of Coordinating Committee hereby receives the January 18th, 2018 consent agenda, items 5.1 through 5.4.3, and that all the recommendations contained therein be adopted. We've had a couple pulled. F2, that was pulled by F1, proposed inclusionary zoning regulations, affordable housing, and that was pulled by Councillor Bray, and I pulled the OMB section, item number 3 under F. So, Motion to resolve that the Development Service Section of Coordinated Committee hereby receives the January 18, 2018 consent agenda, items 5.1 through 5.4.3, and all the recommendations contained therein be adopted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
In favor?
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell.
In favor.
Chair Smith.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, F1, proposed inclusionary zoning regulations, Councillor Bray.
Thank you. I had just asked for this to be pulled. I know we're receiving it for information, but I just thought it was great to see the provincial commitment for affordable housing, and I think it further demonstrates the value that a housing and accommodation committee could provide to the town if council agrees that we set that up later in the month when it comes to council. Thank you.
Awesome. And I pulled item F3, but, sorry. Oh, okay. Sorry. So, do we need a motion for that then? Oh, okay. So, that being said, resolve that the Development Services Section of Coordinated Committee recommends that Council receives a report on the Province of Ontario's proposed inclusionary zoning regulations, which would implement the Promoting Affordable Housing Act 2016 for information.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
In favor?
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell.
In favor.
Chair Smith.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
So I just pulled the Ontario Municipal Board reform. Thank you. Because I've been puzzled myself as where if the ONB is existing, is it not existing, and I wanted to compliment Doug for the work he did and the explanation of everything. I don't know if everyone else has got their head around what's happening and when, but if you haven't had a chance to look at it, it's very good reading and very explained. I think I understand it now. Matter of fact, I was asking the mayor the other day what it was. So, so we will see the ONB disappear, is that correct? Only into this tribunal? Is that what I'm hearing that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. With the greatest respect, it was,
Oh, with Nathan.
Mr.
I'm sorry,
Lukash who
Nathan.
actually,
I'm sorry.
reviewed the data
Yeah.
and assembled the report for us. So if it's okay,
Thank you.
I'm gonna
Yes, congratulations.
ask him to respond.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, the OMB, the province has issued a number of regulations under an act that they approved about a year ago now. These regulations would kind of set out the rules of a new tribunal called the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal that would replace the Ontario Municipal Board. So the Ontario Municipal Board would be dissolved. We don't really know yet what the composition of that LPAT, we call it in short form, would be. So there's still some information from the province that we need to fully understand, but there would be new rules under that local planning appeal tribunal that would apply to appeals through the land use process.
So you'll keep us informed as that progresses through the channels of government. Thank you. I just recommend if anybody hasn't read that, can you post your report on the website somewhere? Because I think it explains it very well. Maybe get that posted, something on there that people could look at. Thank you. Okay, motion here that Coordinated Committee of Council recommends that Council receives a report on the Building Better Communities and Conserving Watersheds Act 2017, Ontario Municipal Board reform for information.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell.
Favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Chair Smith? Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay. So this concludes this portion of coordinated committee. And we'll take a short break and come back to general government.
Meeting back to order. This is the general government section. And under deputations, petitions, presentations, and public meeting, we have one. We have a representative of the Marwood Homeowner Association, Mr. Bill Clark, will be in attendance to discuss a recommendation of the Marwood Golf Course becoming a municipal golf course. So, Mr. Clark, if you'd come to the table. Just to remind you, Mr. Clark, deputations have a 10-minute time limit. So
8.5 minutes.
Yes, no problem. Fred, welcome.
He's practiced it.
Mr. Chairman, Mayor Smith, distinguished councillors all, good morning. My name is Bill Clark, and I'm here this morning to talk on behalf of the Wasaga Marwood Homeowners Association. That Marwood Golf Course should become a municipal golf course and an asset to the town of Wasaga Beach. And these are the reasons why. Number one, to ensure that Wasaga Beach will always have a regulation golf course, R71, at all times. Since both Georgian Sands and Twin Creek have insufficient memberships to support a standalone golf course in the long run. Number two, to retain Wasaga's cultural historical landscape. Number three, to create the area's most prestigious 18-hole golf course. Number four, to enhance Wasaga's image as a tourist destination. Number five, to preserve our natural treasure, Marwood, for our children and our next generation. The Smardenkas have made tremendous improvements to the golf course and the clubhouse. Therefore, we must congratulate them on a job well done. But there is still a lot to be done. We feel there are two choices to be made. Number one is to purchase Marwood Golf and Country Club at a negotiable price and make the necessary improvements to the clubhouse and the golf course. Number two, put the course on the heritage list and loan Marwood a sum of perhaps $350,000 to be repaid over a term with interest to be arranged. This infusion of capital would transform Marwood into a premier golf course in this area. It would be groomed, trimmed and manicured and make Marwood as important to Wasaga Beach as the National is to Augusta, Georgia. Marwood has always been financially sound. Leases George, Dino and Tula were able to pay $1.8 million over 9 years to Baywood Homes and still found funds to pave the area from the parking lot to the car storage area. They also installed the full underground water sprinkler system. Municipal ownership and heritage designation would result in this course remaining whole. Thus this council will be taking the first step in the right direction to vastly increase the overall image of Wasaga Beach and better promote it as a tourist destination. Because we are a tourist-dependent town, we must take advantage of every opportunity which may present itself in order to add to our list of tourist attractions in the best possible way. Council must be aware that Marwood is the only viable golf course in Wasaga Beach and an essential part to our tourist industry. Marwood Golf Course is part of the town's history and an important component of the town's appeal. As stated by Mayor Smith when he and Alex Medenka erected a historical sign in front of Marwood Clubhouse on May 15, 2016. This sign is proof of Marwood's significant history and of Wasaga Beach's past, and if it were not, this sign would not be there. Marwood is well documented and copies of section 29-06 of the Ontario Heritage Act have already been provided to all members of council. At present there are 2 housing development proposals that have been submitted by the Smardenka Group. One 455 homes and the other 410 homes to be built on Marwood Golf Course. The plan showing the extension along Masters Lane shows two streets, A and B. Street B serves the 55 homes, while Street A serves no purpose other than providing access for future development. To quote Mr. Alex Mardenka, this property is far too valuable to be used as a golf course. Duntroon, Laura Bay, Montera, Cranberry, Battenau Creek, Twin Creek, Georgian Sands, All Lake, Springwater, Mad River, Oslerbrook, Brookley and Midland cannot match the deep historic roots of Marwood dating back to 1924. The town, however, refused to apply the appropriate zoning found on page 93 of Wasaga's zoning bylaw, section 13-2-2CR, which stands for commercial recreational. But it continues to be zoned open space, a misnomer to be sure. The Mardenka's legal team, doing their due diligence, may have neglected and failed to inform the Mardenka Group of this zoning discrepancy. It is common knowledge that one cannot operate a business enterprise on open space without violating the town zoning bylaw, a ground rule for zoning bylaws. This oversight by the town and Mardenka's legal team does not transfer continuous development rights, as two wrongs do not make a right. Due to these facts, the people of Wasaga and the Homeowners Association feel that this problem should be addressed. No matter what, the Mardenka Group cannot accomplish any of this without a partner and an accomplice who is willing to sell Wasaga's best golf course down the river. And that partner and accomplice would be you, this council. If in the event this council does not purchase or take appropriate steps to stop the development on Marwood, which is the jewel in Wasaga Beach's crown, we are very confident that the people of Wasaga Beach will echo their anger and discontent at the next election in October. Many councillors and politicians have made some dreadful mistakes in the past. By not purchasing Marwood Golf Course and allowing this project to be passed, your names will be attached to the worst mistake ever made in the history of Wasaga Beach. Quote from Mr. Mardenka: "We brought this course to keep it out of the hands of greedy developers. It has not been lost on us how important this course is to this community. This property is far too valuable to be used as a golf course. The question is now, will council live up to their oath of office and accept its responsibility of stewardship and guardians of the assets of Wasaga Beach to be inherited by our children and the next generation? Or has it been lost on council how important Marwood is to this community, knowing full well that the other two courses are not viable? It has been noticed by residents of Wasaga Beach that the Mardenkas played a significant role in Mayor Brian Smith's election campaign in 2014, making both Boston Pizza one of the mayor's headquarters and hosting a victory party at the Mardenkas' residence. However, while we acknowledge that there is absolutely nothing illegal in forming bonds of friendship, we are of the opinion that it's ethically improper for Mayor Smith to vote on any issue involving his friends. Mayor Smith can no longer be depended upon to be impartial in matters involving the Mardenkas, and therefore we politely ask Mayor Smith to refrain from voting on any matter pertaining to his friends, the Mardenkas. Thank you. And thank you for allowing me to bring this to the council today.
Mr. Stockwell?
Yeah, your last comment there, sir, through you, Mr. Chair, about receiving monies from the private sector and then not voting on their issues. Is that something that you would do right across the board, or just for this one?
Fred?
Well, the bottom line is there is a condition that's been created here between the mayor and Ms. Mardenka. We didn't create this condition. So the bottom line is it ethically proper for him, for Mr. Smith or the Mayor Smith to vote on issues that concern his friends? In our opinion, is that it would not be ethically proper.
That's not the question. The question is, are you prepared to do that right across the board for all the members that take money from the private sector? They can't vote on those issues.
There's nothing illegal from taking private.
Sorry?
There's nothing wrong with taking money from private sector.
Well, it's obviously.
That's not what we said.
What did you say it was?
That is not what we said.
No, but you're not answering my question. My question is, that would you do this right across the board? So that if a member of council took some monies from a developer and their properties came up during the course of the term, 4 years, that they have to step aside and not vote. Is that what you say, right across the board?
I would think that if a member has created a condition where they're very friendly with a particular person, and this is what we're saying here, nothing else, if he's very friendly with a particular person, that we have to rely on the mayor in this particular case to be totally impartial on anything. And if you have an exception to that, I'm sorry, I can't help it.
But it's not a question of exception, Mr. Chairman. It's a question of what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. And under the rules of elections for a number of years, the private sector is limited to making a contribution, an individual contribution of $750. They can't do more than that. And some people running for council accept those donations. Now I didn't, and only because nobody offered it to me. but when you do that, are you saying that as soon as you do that, you're putting yourself in a position that you have to exclude yourself from all the voting on that?
You're misreading what was said. You're
We
totally
never said
misreading
that.
what was said.
I don't know if I am.
No, we stated here that the condition exists because it was a personal friendship, not because he received some money for the election. It was a personal friendship when you have a mayor's party at your house and you make your Boston Pizza as your headquarters for your election. There is a relationship, and that relationship is what. Listen, we did not create this relationship. That relationship was created by Mr. Mayor. I just
but
think it
as
is
you say,
improper.
using your words, there's nothing illegal about it.
Of course not.
No. But you say it's
Absolutely
morally wrong.
Ethically improper, yes, absolutely.
Well,
The word ethic
you've got a lot of people to convince across the province of Ontario, because those rules are laid down by the provincial government, and they've been there for many, many years. And if you want to take it further up the ladder, you can say anybody running for the provincial to contribute shouldn't be, anybody running for the federal, and you know, the system doesn't work that way.
It's a personal relationship.
You're still misreading this whole thing.
You're misreading it,
You're
sir.
Excuse me, I'm going to interrupt. The issue of a conflict is a decision of the individual. It is not something for debate. The mayor has indicated he would like to speak, so Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you, and I'm not going to belabor this or drag this down to whatever level we may want to drag it down to, but I do want to make a couple of things very clear to these gentlemen. First of all, Alex and Sandy Schmardenka are absolutely, I would consider them friends. I will tell you this, though. Before you start quoting things, gentlemen, you might want to be clear on what you're saying. At no time ever was Boston Pizza my campaign headquarters. That is 100% false. And at no time ever did the Schmardenkas or I host a victory party at their home. At no time. And you may laugh, sir, with all due respect, but it's false.
It is.
It is false. My victory party was held at Boston Pizza, not their home. There's a big difference, in my opinion. So I just wanted to clear up those two items, Mr. Chair, and we'll deal with the rest through the proper course and procedures. Thank you.
Okay. As chair, I would like to say that I'm aware of many friendships on council that come into play with many decisions over the course of a year. What you're saying is that you're questioning the integrity of an individual, right, of how their friendship would influence their decision. And I don't believe that's fair. Fred, you and I, you've had me over to your house. You know, we're friends. You sold me your house. Does that, do you think that that's going to influence a decision? We sit here on council to take all of the information and understand that all parties have rights. And our decision is to make the best possible decision to respect the rights of all individuals involved to the betterment of our community. And that cannot be bought with friendship or money or anything else for me. And anyone that knows me knows that to be true. And for you to suggest that there's members of council that would influence, it offends me. But And I will tell you, through the course of this process, there's been many things said and communicated throughout our community that were grossly false. And it doesn't help your cause, I don't believe. I think, I'm not going to say anything more, but it concerns me that we would question the integrity of an individual over a friendship. Thank you.
I don't think we'll solve the problem here. So, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Sorry.
Sylvia?
Just
Or
one-
sorry, Councillor Bray.
Thank you. Just one comment. Early on in our council, it was Councillor Stockwell that pointed out to me that there's a sniff test for politicians, and when we're making our decisions, we have to make that personal decision, but that the public will judge our decisions. So it's not up to kind of us, but certainly the public, if they have concerns, they will voice them. So the sniff test, as you pointed out to me, if something doesn't smell right, then it probably should be vocalized and discussed. So just further to Councillor Stockwell, I think.
I can talk all day.
Fair comments.
So,
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Councillor Stockwell.
I just think it's a cheap shot. I think it's a cheap shot. And Councillor, don't you look so
Point of order,
so
this is a
upset.
deputation by a resident. Can we not have some respect for this person at the table?
Rule on the point of order so I can continue, Mr. Chairman. I have got the floor.
My concern is the respect for the resident making a deputation.
I believe that given the information that the residents presented, I'm going to allow Mr. Councillor Stockwell to continue.
So you're ruling it is respectful to discuss.
Sorry? I'm saying that I'm allowing Councillor Stockwell to complete his point.
That's it. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Just
Councillor
one
Smith?
comment. Over the years that I've been here in town, I've made many, many friendships. Some are very close friends and some are acquaintances. If I was to judge every issue by who my friend was that might be involved, and that it goes to the deputy and Councillor Bray, that you're friends with different businesses in town, business people. To say that we're supposed to make a decision based on who we know, I think is wrong.
Would you not recuse yourself from an issue
No.
that involves your
Our
friends?
code of conduct is only if there's financial gains to be made. It's nothing to do with conflict of interest per se. It's just if we cannot accept cash or gifts or anything as councillors.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I'm not sure why Councillor Smith would drag myself and Councillor
I'm just
Bray into
using an
this.
example. Sorry.
Thank you. I do
That
have
fit
the-
any of us.
I have the floor, Councillor Smith. I would like to clarify, I am not a business owner in town like you've just suggested. I do not have relationships with people. Thank you.
But you did take money.
Mr. Chair, I think the deputation is complete. Committee has had an opportunity to discuss certain aspects of the deputation. As far as my sense is, I think the discussion has been complete.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, we'll move on to unfinished business. That's quite usual. Moving on to unfinished business, there's none on the agenda today. Other agency report, none, so we'll then move to the consent agenda. There's been 3 items pulled. The Accessibility Advisory Committee, November 30th minutes by Councillor Bray. The Director of Legislative Services and Clerk's report dated January 18th, 2018, appointed of the alternative member of the County of Simcoe Council, pulled by Councillor Bray, Deputy Mayor and Mayor. And finally, accounts, December 31st, 2017 by Councillor Bray. Okay, so resolved that, moved by Mayor Smith and seconded by Councillor Smith, resolved that General Government Section of Coordinating Committee hereby receives the January 18th, 2018 consent agenda items 6.4.1 through 6.4.3, and that the recommendations contained therein be adopted as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Councillor Eagle.
In favor?
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell.
In favor.
Chair Belanger.
In favor.
Thank you. Motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, so we'll move to the first item, Accessibility Advisory Committee, November 30th, 2017 minutes, and that was Councillor Gray.
Thank you. There was a couple of things I was just looking for the clarity. In the minutes for the Accessibility Advisory Committee, there was an update from Councillor Belanger talking about grants for senior center. 1/3 of the province, federal and community will raise the money. I've had residents telling me that I don't need to worry about funding because the federal government's going to pay 1/3, the provincial government's going to pay 1/3 of our hub, and I just think when I see it in writing in the minutes, it confirms that those are facts, whereas in fact they're grants, and when the time is right we will apply. So I just think we have to be careful how we discuss funding things that we're going to be or that we're considering building, because people are already jumping to conclusions that may or may not come true. As well, there's a comment, one of the members of the committee asked where the funding would come from for the Downtown Development Master Plan, and he was told at that term that 2/3 will be public and federal funding and taxes for the hub. This came from a staff member, and again, I think we really need to be cautious because these aren't facts yet, but we're confusing the public. At this point, we should just be, it's in the minutes now. I don't know if those minutes need to be corrected, but I want it on the record that the minutes are inaccurate.
Just,
thank you.
Thank you. Just to clarify, I believe that was minutes from when Chris Ruth attended the meeting. I don't believe I spoke to that at all. The only grant I spoke to was a grant where we were to raise 1/3 of the community, or the drop-in center, and I had passed on some information about some resident donations. But anyhow, I think in general terms, though, as I've heard it mentioned many times by many members of staff, that typically that there is funding that is 1/3, and that was all the reference was about. It was not a guarantee in any stretch of the imagination.
And I just think moving forward, our minutes should be, reflect the fact that it's typical funding, because residents are telling me, don't worry, we're getting it, and I don't think that's true. We haven't applied. I don't know that anyone can guarantee that we're getting anything. There's an election coming up. So federal funding, provincial funding, nothing is a guarantee until you have their check.
Thank you, but I don't believe anyone has given any indication of a guarantee. So.
It reflects that in the minutes. That's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, so with that said, moved by Mayor Smith and seconded by Councillor Smith, resolved that the General Government Service Section Coordinating Committee received the November 30th, 2017 Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting minutes from the Clerk's Department as circulated.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Bray.
We're just with, okay. Opposed?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor.
Councillor Eagle.
In favor.
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell.
In favor.
Chair Belanger.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Next is Director of Legislative Services and Clerk Report dated January 18th, 2018. Appointment of the alternative member to the County of Simcoe Council. pulled by 3 individuals. I'll take them in order. First, Councillor Gray.
Thank you. I understand we're the 3rd municipality out of 33 or 43 to do this. And I just wondered if we had statistics about the attendance of the mayor and the deputy mayor at county council to see if this is indeed actually something we need to be worried about at this point. So that question would probably be through you to the clerk, as it's her report.
Yes, if I could just provide some additional information. So in the report, I had indicated that there was 3 municipalities that had appointed alternates. Since then, there's been an additional of the Township of Ramera. And just so you are aware, the way that they had appointed was that they had 1 member that expressed interest on their committee or on council, and they went with that obviously interested candidate, and they are under a ward system. So I had provided some information about the other municipalities and how they went about the appointment. As far as statistics from attendance, no, I don't have that information unfortunately in front of me from the county council, but we do have the mayor and deputy here that could probably speak to their attendance individually if required. But having said that, you know, it certainly was, it's not mandatory, but based on the direction from the last report that I brought forward, and my recommendation in there was that to bring forward a further report, and that committee at that level and council ratified that they were interested in having an alternate. Something to think about, I know some of our other municipalities within the county, 16 other municipalities within the county, they were interested, in particular the one had a member of their county council, one of their mayor or deputy, who fell ill, and to be able to have an alternate there would have been very helpful to them because of the weight of vote at the county council level. So that's just some additional information based on the request.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. This is something the county put in place as you may do it. It's not a mandatory thing. If members absent a lot, I can understand it. I don't think that's the case this term. I personally don't see a need for it. However, if it's the will of council to put it in place, I can support it. I would rather see it for next term. I think that way anybody who's running for positions knows that if you come in the first position, you know that you have to go prepared to also understand and know what's going on at the county level. I don't believe I've seen Councillor Smith at any of our county council meetings this term, so I think to send somebody in who isn't up on the issues to vote on things for myself doesn't quite make sense, but I'll go with the will of council on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support it. I think it's a great idea. There are times I can say in this term of council where I have not been able to attend county, and so we're down to 1 member. And if by chance a vote or weighted vote should be put forward, I think it's important that both members be there. I could go either way. However, I could certainly say it's fine to implement this in the next term of council, or I'm fine to appoint someone now either way as well. I think it's a good idea. I think it's important that if we can have 2 people there representing us, that we do. And those are my comments, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
So based on that, I'd like to maybe make an amendment to the motion that would say that we start it next term. That was one of the options that staff put in here. So I would ask that the amendment be don't proceed with an alternate member until after the 2018 election. Because I think that will allow any member who is expected to be a backup to make sure that they're prepared to go and know the issues. Thank you.
If I may, so certainly I can prepare an amending motion. We just need to have a seconder for that. But just one additional question. So there was a draft policy attached that said, with the recommendation of staff in the draft policy was that the member of council, the councillor with the highest number of votes would then be appointed. So just getting clarification whether the committee is willing to support that, and realizing that it wouldn't come into effect until the next election.
I fully support that.
I could support that. However, it might be a decision that the next council may wish to determine, not this council, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Eagle?
Yeah, just a question here. If you do designate somebody from council to be on the county, this person receive remuneration the same as the people that are on county receive?
I'm just guessing, but I would think that if a council member was filling in for the mayor wouldn't get paid that day, but the person filling in would. That's how I would assume that it would.
It's a question, that's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no further comments, the only comment I would make is I attended a workshop recently at the county, and I believe there are some decisions with the changes going forward that we would want as much representation at county as possible. And there could potentially be times where we have two individuals that might not be able to make a meeting, and at a point there it would certainly be good to have an alternate of that. I don't think there's any downside to it, and I think it would be very rare that the individual is necessarily utilized. So I would support us moving forward immediately, but I think the amendment, the amendment gets voted on first. Correct. Okay, so if there's no further questions, we'll, as soon as the amended motion is ready, we'll vote.
Mr. Chair, could I declare a conflict of interest with what the deputy is saying, the position, so that I can step back from the conversation?
That's your decision.
I finished last, so I don't.
Sorry, if I could just get clarification. So I did ask the question as far as the draft policy, but then we were chatting about doing the amendment, so I can't recall, did the committee say that they wished the policy to come forward in the same form, or did they want to wait until the next council?
I think
just for clarification.
I think the next council could make a change anyhow. I
Yes.
think everyone
Okay.
was
Just
comfortable with the same form.
Perfect, thank you.
Oh no, but the other people until we move forward and then
Do we have a seconder for the motion to amend again? Okay.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Byfolke and seconded by Mayor Smith. Resolved that the General Government Service Section Coordinating Committee recommends to Council that the draft policy regarding the appointment of an alternative member of the County of Simcoe Council be approved. Oh, sorry. Further, that the council does not proceed with appointment of an alternative member until after the 2018 election.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a motion to amend. Members of committee have heard the question. I'll call for the vote. Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolke.
In favor?
Councillor Eagle.
Opposed?
Councillor Smith declared a potential pecuniary interest. Mayor Smith.
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell.
Opposed.
Chair Belanger.
Opposed.
Mr. Chair, the motion is defeated on a tie vote of 3 in favor and 3 opposed.
Can I just get a point of clarification? The clerk had said that because it hadn't been read, it wasn't really an amendment, it was a new motion. So,
If I can, so the motion wasn't formally read before the committee, right? So if the mover and seconder, I apologize, I don't know who that was, if they were okay with it, we could make the changes to it more informally as far as having a formal amendment. So that's how that was prepared.
Oh, I see.
Sorry. But in essence, it's been defeated. Yeah.
So the motion has been defeated. My apologies. I thought it was a motion to amend.
That was the question.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
If I may, through you to the clerk. So where do we go from here, Madam Clerk?
That's a very good question. So because that has been defeated, if somebody else wishes to bring forward a motion to move it forward today, as recommended originally in the report, then we can do that, and we have that motion prepared.
The original mover was Councillor Stockwell, and the seconder was Councillor Eagle. Are you still? Okay, then we'll go ahead and read the motion. Resolved that the General Government Service Section of Coordinating Committee recommends to Council that the draft policy regarding the appointment of an alternative member to the County of Simcoe Council be approved. Further, that Council appoint an alternative member to the County of Simcoe Council for a balance of term of council, and further that the appropriate appointment by law for an alternative member to the County of Simcoe Council be brought forward to the January council meeting for consideration.
Thank you. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Bray.
Opposed?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
Opposed.
Councillor Ego.
In favor.
Councillor Smith declared a pecuniary interest. Mayor Smith.
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell.
Favor.
Chair Belanger.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 4 in favor and 2 opposed.
We have to decide by number of votes. Should we say the process, or should we decide the highest number of votes in the last election?
Right.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So the draft policy that was included indicated that it would be the member of council, or the councillor who had the highest number of votes would be appointed should that councillor member wish to be appointed, and if not, it would continue down to the next. At this point, it would have to go, it's draft, so it will have to go to council for ratification and then the formal process.
Okay, the last item to be pulled was accounts by Councillor Bray.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to ask my questions to the treasurer, and just to point out, my one concern was there was a bill to action lock under the beachfront check register for $3,700. It's at Upper Dard Maintenance, and I just wondered how many locks were involved for $3,700. But you pointed out that it was more than one facility, and it was just the description that wasn't as accurate as maybe it needed to be read from the register. So my questions were addressed. Thank you.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Smith.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. So can we have some clarity as to what locks, how many locks were replaced?
I can read the email, or Jocelyn might remember off the top of her head. It sounded like quite a list, but when I saw $3,700, I thought that was a really expensive door originally.
Through you, Mr. Chair. There is, I don't have the number of locks, but it involved the Upper Dard, Lower Dard, Retail Below Dard, Nico's, Funnel Tunnel, Splash Pad, CIAO Burger, the public washrooms, Tim Hortons, and Beaver Tail. And that was all those facilities were serviced for that $3,700 amount.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. My understanding is that the town is in the process of changing all the locks to a secure lock, and I'm assuming that's where we're going here. That's why this is happening.
I would think so, but I can't confirm that without going back and looking at the invoice.
Mr. Chair, I can confirm that is indeed the case, is that the town is changing all the locks to a standard secure lock, so that it'll be easier to monitor the locks and easier to change out the locks going forward.
Okay, so there's no further comment. Thank you, Jocelyn. Moved by Councillor Smith and seconded by Mayor Smith. Resolved that the December 1st to 31st, 2017 accounts as reviewed by General Government Service Section and Coordinating Committee are hereby confirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor.
Councillor Ego.
In favor.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell.
Favor.
Chair Belanger.
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, the next motion is related to closed session. Do we need to read the entire topic or just? Moved by Councillor Smith and seconded by Mayor Smith, resolved that pursuant to section 239 2B of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, the next portion of the Coordinating Committee of January 18, 2018 be closed to the public to discuss personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees.
Thank you. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Councillor Ugo.
In favor?
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell.
In favor?
Chair Belanger.
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
That's what she keeps pausing. Just, I'm not expecting. Yeah, because you go into other
Yeah.
Not the end of the world, but, you know, it's rad.
It'll just be a moment. Because it's locked.
Like it froze?
Yeah. It's not doing anything now.
I might have to shut it down.
Put it on spouse.
There. Government body, provincial, whatever, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, no.
I know. Control. No control. Let's just go be transparent and we don't have to worry about control.
It's not the right way to go about it.
No.
You never heard of
It's a dirty word.
I'm just gonna try to do it this way because I can't get this to connect.
Get it clean. You're in the top, I don't get it back. So my mom said to me, so she was like, where'd you get the jacket? And I said, you know, I got this little text that just showed it to you. Or something. No, I don't know. And I like, oh,
It's still online. I'm gonna try to do it on here.
yes.
Yeah, it was easier.
Yes.
He said, this is going back.
This one's
He said,
it should be, but I should be able to do it from here.
twice a year. They told me on the day before Christmas.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, they had twice 5 straight.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's one of the, it's one of these things can't come from the part due to the nature of it. It's just because there's abuse and harassment and yeah, all kinds of things that are going. Is that coming up? We're just waiting for IT to provide us with some technical assistance. She's just
Here he comes.
And now it's totally like this, and I should be able to access it from here as
Yeah, we
well.
can just do it right from there. If you click on the OBS that's hidden down there.
I'm not sure if everybody's had the chance to
No,
meet.
this is
Who
our
is this
new-
guy?
Yeah,
Hi.
this is Chris Hodgson. He's Hodgson, right?
Hodgson, yeah.
Hodgson, yes. Our new
Welcome,
IT.
Chris. Thank you.
Yes. This is Kelsey.
It's probably just on the other screen.
He's only here a couple of days and our system has launched.
Throw him right into it, so.
Yeah, normally there's another screen in there.
Yeah.
That'll show me, and we should be able to
Okay, moved by Councillor Ego and seconded by Councillor Stockwell. Resolved that coordinating committee recommends to council that it confirm the direction given to the Director of Legislative Services and clerk.
Question?
You have to, Mr. Chair, as part of this, you need to just rise and report and just give a quick summary in terms of what was discussed in the closed session and what the direction was, and then you can put that motion. No, it's just a figure of speech.
Okay, in closed session, we discussed code of conduct issues related to a member of committee and provided the CAO with direction going, and clerk direction going forward. Moved by Councillor Ego and seconded by Councillor Stockwell. Resolved that coordinated committee recommends to council that it confirm the direction given to the Director of Legislative Services and clerk.
And I'll be voting against it. I feel that this number has been previously warned, the code of conduct explained to them, and continues to ignore it. So I really feel that individuals who sit on our committees need to follow our code of conduct, and if they can't best represent the town, I think that we need to remove them immediately. So for that reason, I won't support it.
No further comments, Mr. Chair, so having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Bray.
Opposed?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
Opposed.
Councillor Ego.
In favor.
Councillor Smith.
In favor?
Mayor Smith.
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell.
In favor.
Chair Belanger.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 5 in favor and 2 opposed.
Okay, this motion is put forth by Councillor Bray, moved by Councillor Bray and seconded by Deputy Mayor. Be it resolved that General Government Section of Coordinated Committee recommends to council that staff be requested to review council's code of conduct to introduce a step. Boy, this would be a pretty What's that?
Maybe, Mr. Chair, maybe I could read it because my printing is leaves a little bit to be desired. So this is the motion. Be resolved, the General Government Section of Coordinated Committee recommends to council that staff be requested to review council's code of conduct to introduce a step in the code dealing with complaints about actions of council committee members, whereby council would be the decision-making body with respect to complaints about committee members.
Any comments?
Yeah, just a comment. This was from the discussion earlier in our community services meeting, where we did not want complaints about committee members to go to the integrity commissioner because there was a cost issue and we were appointing them. We felt we should be the ones probably dealing with any problems that they bring to the table. Thank you.
Just one small comment is that if this happens again, I don't think individuals should be allowed to make the decision to call these people in or however that was made without notifying the neighbor or council. It should be, we should be told from the beginning what's happening.
I believe this is just about the decision-making, not the process itself, so that's something
we need to work on it.
So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
Opposed.
Councillor Smith.
Excuse me, what were you voting on again?
Just that council makes the decision related to the committee as opposed to going to the integrity.
In favor. In favor.
Councillor Smith, that was in favor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Smith?
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell?
Opposed.
Chair Belanger?
In favor.
Thank you. Motion carries on a vote of 5 in favor and 2 opposed.
that motion?
Nope. Yes, I do.
Okay, moved by Councillor Stockwell and seconded by Councillor Ego. Resolved that coordinating committee recommends to council that it advise the integrity commissioner to provide a report that gives all the background information in regards to the billing amounts and numbers of complaints on council versus council and councils versus public. The requested report should be based on full disclosure of information, giving names of those initiating the complaints, as well as the cost to the taxpayer, covering the resulting process. The requested report should be made available to council prior to any final payments being made to the commissioner.
So I mean, Mr. Chair, just with respect to the names, I think that the names are confidential. Any complaints with respect to that are launched with the integrity commissioner, those names are kept confidential. I can see in terms of the complaints council versus another member of council, and complaints members of the public against members of council, and the aggregates of that in terms of number of complaints and the dollar amounts. But with respect to individual names, I think that that would be.
I believe the integrity commissioner made that quite clear at an earlier
But
time.
question, are you suggesting that if the resolution names the members of council who takes action with the integrity commissioner, that's okay? I mean, I don't see why council should be protected.
Mr. Chair, my comment is related to the point of a complainant. So it doesn't make a distinction between who the complainant is. It's the name of the complainant. That's the principle in terms of the name of the complainant is confidential. So I take that approach as opposed to making a distinction between a public complainant and a member of council.
But the object to be exercised is to find out whether this is to service the public or this is to service members of council.
We can get the distribution in total, just not by individual.
Well,
Mr. Chair, I'm sure the Integrity Commission will know what he can and can't or should or shouldn't do, and we'll make it clear we want all the information he can give us, I would assume, and he'll give us a report, I'm sure, based on what whatever rules he is governed by that he can provide.
I'm happy with it.
So, are we going to do a friendly amendment and take out names from that motion?
No, what we're saying is the integrity commissioner would make that determination. So,
Yep.
But
Yes, I'm not comfortable approving a motion that's asking him to do something I know you can't do. So
just take the names
take that piece out of it, and I have no issue with it. I think it'd be quite interesting, actually.
well, I believe let's move forward with the motion, and if it's defeated, then we'll go from there.
Oh, sure. We can remove the parts that we know the commissioner can't adhere to. There's no point in asking them when we know it can't.
That's right. Oh, I have a couple of saplings. That's okay. We might be a good way through.
I made you work for a bit. Yeah, you see. It's a lot of light being filled in. Yeah.
Okay, so we're not just gonna change that, we're gonna put an amendment on for that?
Well, he's already read it.
Nancy, or Forrest.
Moved
Yeah.
and seconded, good, make you friendly.
Or it might be on
Okay.
this.
But they,
Yeah, they're not worried about selling this for me.
Oh, so prayers and pens?
sorry, I filed it already. I was getting ready.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I got ready to go.
That's the amended motion.
Okay, just for clarification, before I read this, because it may satisfy everything, so the only thing that is being requested to be removed is the name, so if they could potentially provide the number as opposed to a total, it would say there were these many complaints, these were the costs per complaint, and the only thing that would not be included would be the names.
So, if that scorecard gonna be reported, could we go the next step and say, and tell us how many came from the general public and tell us how many came from
Right, that's still in
outside?
there. The only thing that is on this amendment, the only thing that is being removed is the names of the individuals initiating the complaints.
We're gonna get a breakdown.
Yeah, all, the rest stays as is. So,
Yeah,
moved
that's
by
motion.
Deputy Mayor by Fulton and seconded by Councillor Bray. Read the Integrity Commissioner report. Be it resolved that the recommendation now before Coordinating Committee be amended, removing reference to giving names to those initiating the complaints.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this is an amendment, am I understanding correctly?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so having heard the amendment, I'll call for the question. Call the question. Councillor Bray?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor?
Councillor Ego?
In favor.
Councillor Smith?
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell?
Opposed?
Mayor Smith?
In favor.
Chair Belanger?
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
That's amended.
Do we need to read that as amended?
It says amended.
Okay, moved by Councillor Stockwell and seconded by Councillor Ego. Resolved that Coordinating Committee recommends to Council that it advise the Integrity Commissioner to provide a report that gives all of the background information in regards to the billing amounts and number of complaints on Council versus Council and Council versus public. The requested report should be based on full disclosure of information. I take that line out.
Well, you know,
No.
don't
Oh,
take
don't
it
take it
out.
out? Okay, I'll just not
Yeah, we
read
want
it.
to know what the complaint is.
As well as the cost to the taxpayer covering the resulting process. The requested report should be made available to council prior to any final payments being made to the commissioner as amended.
Thank you. Having heard the question.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think if I recall what you just said, it was the determination between council versus council and council versus public. I think those words are backwards. It should be council versus council and public versus council. I don't think council's taken anyone from the public to the Integrity Commissioner.
Is everybody okay with that small change?
Okay, thank you. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Bray? Deputy Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor?
Councillor Ego?
In favor.
Councillor Smith?
In favor.
Mayor Smith?
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell?
Favor?
Chair Belanger?
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed. Thank you.
that concludes our meeting. The date of the next meeting is February 8th, 2018. And just to confirm, yeah, do we have to confirm the direction? Okay. Meeting is adjourned.
Can I ask something? I wanted to say something before it ended. But I just wanted to say that I apologize if I've offended anybody today. My outburst was